Hare Krishna and thank you for joining. Today we are discussing the summary of chapter number 1 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And this chapter is titled as Observing the Army in the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. This is based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness, otherwise known as ISKCON. So we begin with invoking auspiciousness by chanting the Mangalacharan prayers. Normally we chant a very small section of that prayer. In every session we only chant this part of the prayer. But today we are going to chant the entire prayer. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we begin by describing the two sections, major sections of chapter number 1, section A and section B. So section A is verse 1 to 27, which is the introduction, and it describes the preparation for the war. And section B is 1.28 to 46, which is Arjuna's doubts and lamentation. In Sanskrit, this section A is also known as Sainya Nirikshan Yoga, and the section B is known as Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So the chapter 1 begins with Dhritarashtra asking question to Sanjaya. Dhritarashtra was blind, so he couldn't see what is going on in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So Vyasdev, before the war, he offered a benediction to Dhritarashtra, saying that I can give you vision by which you can see what is going on in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, if you want to see, if you would like to see. But then Dhritarashtra rejected it, and he said, please give that vision to my secretary, who is Sanjaya. So this is Sanjaya and this is Dhritarashtra. So Sanjaya, by the mercy, by the blessings of his guru Vyasdev, got a vision, and this was such a divine vision where Sanjaya could see and hear and observe everything that was going on in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Hence, Dhritarashtra is asking to Sanjaya, that is inquiring from Sanjaya, that my sons and the sons of Pandu, they have all assembled in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So after assembling in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, what did they do? So Sanjaya saw, or he pointed his vision to the battlefield, and he could see that Duryodhan, his son, the eldest son of Dhritarashtra, he approached his military art teacher, or the teacher who taught them military science, and his name was Dronacharya. So he approached Dronacharya. After approaching Dronacharya, Duryodhan points out his mistakes. Because when Duryodhan went into the battlefield, before going into the battlefield, he was very confident that they are going to win. But after going there, he saw how expertly Drishtadumna, who was the disciple of Dronacharya, another disciple of Dronacharya, but also was a son of Drupada, who was Dronacharya's enemy. So this arrangement of army was expertly done for the Pandavas by Drishtadyumna. And Drishtadyumna was being taught by Dronacharya. So Duryodhana is pointing out the mistake of Dronacharya, that you are a liberal Brahmana and you taught whatever you had to teach to Drishtadyumna, and now see how expertly he has arranged the army in the battlefield of Kurukshetra against all of us. So this is what he is pointing to. Then Duryodhana started describing the warriors of the opposing side. So he is describing the Pandava side. And then he gives the name of various warriors in this, or the expert warriors, and he compares them with Arjuna and Bhima. So he basically is saying that they are all great warriors. And he continues to name those warriors from the Pandava side till verse 6. Now Duryodhana describes his warriors, because he is saying that if I just praise the opposite side, the commanders in my side, they will get dejected. So he started describing the warriors from his side, and he is talking about Bhishmadev, Drona, Kripa. He is talking about all the great names, and he is saying that there are many more powerful warriors who are ready to lay their lives for me. So this is a very nice verse which explains that, he's saying that they have already laid life for Duryodhana, means they were already killed. That's the mistake he does while speaking or saying that they are going to lay or they are ready to lay their life for me. And then that verse number 10, Duryodhana completes or gives the conclusion of his assessment, and his assessment was that our army is much more powerful than the armies of the Pandavas, because our army is led by Bhishma Pitamaha, whereas the other side, they have powerful warriors, but our army is more powerful. So seeing all this, Bhishma, who was watching all this, Duryodhana playing all kind of politics, so Bhishma, he loses his control. He says that what is the necessity of doing all kind of politics at this point of time? So we have come here to fight, so let's begin the fight. So he asks, before that, he appeals the warrior to support Bhishma. And then Bhishma, seeing all this kind of politics, he blew his conch shell very loudly. So seeing Bhishma blowing his conch shell very loudly, then everyone started blowing their conch shell, and drums and bugles, etc. So the entire sound was like tumultuous. And there the description in verse number 14 is given that Lord Krishna enters into the battlefield along with Madhava and Pandava. So Madhava means Lord Krishna, and Pandava, they both entered into this battlefield, or the battlefield of Kurukshetra, in a white chariot. It's a beautiful white horses driving their chariot. And then the description of the conch shell is given for Lord Krishna and Arjuna. So Lord Krishna blew Panchajanya, Arjuna blew Devadatta, Bhima blew Pondra. Those are the names of the conch shell which has been blown by Krishna and the Pandavas. And the conch shell of the Pandavas are discussed. Of course, Krishna's also is discussed as they are transcendental. So these are the name of the conch shells that were blown by different devotees and Lord Krishna. So Lord Krishna is Panchajanya, Arjuna is Devadatta, Yudhishthira is Ananta Vijaya, Bhima is Pondra, Nakula is Sugosha, and Sahadev, his name, conch shell name is Mani Pushpaka. So this is verse 16 to 18. And then in the 19th verse is described that blowing became so uproarious, means there was conch shell blown all over the places. It was so uproarious that shattered the hearts of the son of Dhritarashtra. So Duryodhana's heart especially got shattered by hearing the sound, the tumultuous sound of the conch shell, which was made by the conch shells of Lord Krishna and Arjuna. Of course, Pandavas also, other Pandavas too. So then in verse 20 is described that Arjuna is ready to fight, and he looked at the Kuru army and spoke to Lord Krishna. So before fighting, he looked at the army of the opposing side, and then he spoke to Lord Krishna that he requests Krishna, the infallible Lord, to draw his chariot in the middle of the battlefield. So he requests Krishna to bring the chariot in the middle of the battlefield because he wants to see. Pashya, the word is used as Pashya, I want to see. So Arjuna wants to see who have come to fight, wishing to please Duryodhana. So this is the reason he wants to see that who has joined the sides of Duryodhana. He is the guy who actually did so much atrocities to the Pandavas in their entire life. So who is willing to fight from that side? So that was what Arjuna wanted to see. So then Lord Sri Krishna, he draws the chariot in the midst of both the armies. So this has been narrated by Sanjaya. Sanjaya says that Krishna takes the chariot in the middle of the battlefield. But he not only takes the chariot in the middle of the battlefield, but he places the chariot right in front of Bhishma and Drona. And Bhishma and Drona, though they were on the opposite side, they were very, very, very dear to Arjuna. So that's the reason Krishna places the chariot right in front of them. And then Krishna is saying, see, I have brought the chariot in the middle of the battlefield, in front of your relatives. They are the same relatives with whom you are going to fight and who has always opposed you. So why didn't you see? So that's why Krishna is pointing his hand to Arjuna to see, show him his relatives who are ready to fight against Arjuna. And then in verse 26, Arjuna sees his relatives assembled on both the sides. So he is actually seeing both the sides. He is seeing the Pandava sides as well as he is seeing the Kaurava sides. And then seeing their relatives, his heart actually gradually changes. And his heart became overwhelmed with compassion. So this is a first sign that Arjuna is becoming weaker. He is seeing, or whatever he has seen right now, Pashya, the word Pashya is used, means through Pratyaksha Praman he is seeing it, and that seeing is causing him bewilderment. So what is that bewilderment? His heart is gradually becoming overwhelmed with compassion. So that is the end of section number 1, Sainya Nirikshan Yoga. And verse 28 to 46 is Arjuna's lamentation, or Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So that section begins with Arjuna reactions of. So Arjuna is now started manifesting the symptoms, the physical symptoms, basically the symptoms on his body. Then those symptoms are limbs curing, his mouth drying up after seeing his relatives. Right. So what later happen is Arjuna's further symptoms. His whole body is trembling. His hair is standing on the end. Gandiva is slipping. And his skin is burning. So these are the external manifestation of what is going on inside his heart. And then Arjuna's further symptoms. So he shows more symptoms and he only sees causes of misfortune by fighting this war. So then now he starts giving reason, and in particular he gives 4 reasons. The first reason was his heart was already, we have seen, his heart is overwhelmed with compassion. So first reason is compassion. Now he is going to speak that Arjuna cannot enjoy the kingdom at the cost of killing his relatives. That is verse number 31. And then he's later on verse 32 to 35 saying Arjuna is not ready to fight even in exchange of the 3 worlds. Because when he fights, his relative will be killed, and if the relatives are killed, with whom he can enjoy after even he wins the battle. So if he dies, he dies. But if he wins, then all the other side will be mostly killed. So with whom he is going to enjoy? So he is giving the reason that he is not even ready to fight in exchange of the three worlds, three planetary systems, upper, lower and middle. And in the verse 36, Arjuna is giving the reason of he is fearful about the sinful reactions. So when he is going to kill his relatives, he is going to get reaction for doing this sin. So, and that reaction means he has to go to hell. So he doesn't want to suffer in hell. Maybe temporarily he is enjoying the kingdom, but later on he has to suffer in the hell. So he doesn't want that. So that's the reason Arjuna is saying he is fearful of sinful reactions. And whom he going to kill? So Arjuna is going to kill the Atatai. So Atatai is aggressor. So there are 6 different kinds of aggressors. One is a poison giver. Second is one who sets fire to the home. Third one who attacks with deadly weapons. Fourth, one who plunders riches. Fifth, one who occupies another's land. And sixth, one who kidnaps another's wife. So these are 6 kind of aggressors. And according to scriptures, they can be killed. And if you kill them, then there is no punishment. But Arjuna is saying that, he is not even ready to kill, even though they have done all this 6 kind of aggression on the Pandavas. And Arjuna is giving the argument from Dharma Shastra. The previous argument was from the Artha Shastra. According to Artha Shastra, if you kill the aggressor, then there is no sinful reaction. But according to Dharma Shastra, if you kill, then you still get reactions. So for that reason, Arjuna is saying that I don't want to participate in this war. So then later on from 37 and 38 is saying that by killing the relatives, he's actually destroying the family members. And there is a series of arguments which Arjuna is giving. That is, he sees destruction of family. From 39 to 43, he gives a 6-step 6-point reason, one by one, systematically explain that what is going to happen. So he sees destruction of family, then he sees destruction of family and society in the 40th verse, and he sees the failure of varnashram system, which is verse number 41. So these are the 6 steps which I was talking about. And in verse number 42, up to 43, he has this same point continuing. So the points are that the superiors are going to be killed. That is, it describes in verse number 39. That is destruction of dynasty. And when the destructions of dynasty happens, then the family traditions are all destroyed. So the Vedic rituals will be stopped. And when Vedic rituals stops, then irreligion actually predominates in the family. And because of the irreligion predominant in the family, then irreligious people take over to the government. And then later the women become polluted. And then there are unwanted progeny. Unwanted progeny means progeny with degraded consciousness. So these are called as Varna Shankara. And Varna Shankara are born. And when the Varna Shankara are predominant in the society, then what happens? All kinds of community project and family welfare activities are devastated. As a result, there is a chaos in the society. So he's systematically explaining this point, that how by fighting this war, how these are going to happen one by one, and that will be this will be a cause of devastation for the present generation and even for the future generation. And for the ancestors will not get benefited through this, because the purificatory process which are done for the ancestors, they will not be done, and the ancestors will also fall down. So that was verse 42. And then he says that those whose family traditions are destroyed, they also dwell in hell. And those who destroy the family tradition, they also dwell in hell. So people, if he gets engaged in this war, he knows for sure that he will be he has to dwell in hell. And then Arjuna in 44th verse is saying that he is thinking, driven by the desires to enjoy the royal happiness, we are ready to kill even our own people. So when Arjuna, before asking Krishna to take the chariot in the middle of the battlefield, he uses the word for Arjuna, this durbuddhi, evil-minded. But here now, the conception of evil-mindedness has changed to, now he is saying, my own people, swajana. Swajana means my own people. How can I kill my own people? So all this we have discussed is because of the attachment. So Arjuna is showing attachment for the relatives, and because of the attachment towards the relatives, he is manifesting all these symptoms, and he is giving reasons why not to fight. So he forgot about his dharma. The purpose of this war was to re-establish dharma, because there was so much adharma in the society caused by the Kauravas. So the whole war was, the war was a holy war, and the purpose of the holy war was to re-establish dharma. Dharma samstarpanarthaya. Krishna is giving that reason. Sambhavani yuge yuge. He appears in this world again and again for re-establishing dharma. So in verse number 45, Arjuna is saying, he has decided it is better for me to die unarmed in the battlefield. Even if they use their arms and if they use their weapons and they kill me, I am not going to retaliate. Right? It's better for me to die unarmed in the battlefield. That's what Arjuna is saying in verse 45. And in the last verse, it is described that Arjuna, overwhelmed with grief, cast aside his bow and arrow and sat down in the chariot. So we can see from this picture, Arjuna has put down, already the Grandier bow had slipped from his hand earlier, but now he has also put down his skewers and the bow. So this is being described by Sanjaya in the last verse of chapter 1. So we see that Arjuna is manifesting saintly qualities, and these are the descriptions which are given. There are 8 saintly qualities which he is manifesting, and they are as, first is soft-heartedness in verse number 28, and he doesn't want to kill even for the exchange of 3 worlds, that is 35. Ready to forgive the aggressors, 36. Considers evil's consequences even at the risk of refusing the obligation to fight. Means his dharma was to fight, but he is seeing the evil consequences, so he doesn't want to participate in this war. And the consciousness of obligation to protect family tradition and morals. He is giving the details of all this from verse 39 to 44. And then he is ready to be killed unarmed but not retaliate. That is 45. And customs according to the Kshatriya fighting principles is unarmed and unwilling foe should not be attacked. But though he may be unarmed, but because of his soft-heartedness, he being a devotee, he is considering that even if they want to kill me, I am not going to retaliate. And then finally he kept down his bow and even broke his vow to not keep the bow once it is lifted. So he already lifted Gandiya bow, but he broke his own promise and he kept the bow aside. So the conclusion is, such a kind and soft-hearted person is fit to receive transcendental knowledge or self-knowledge or the knowledge of the self. So this is what Prabhupada gives the last line of the purport in verse number 46. And the reasons, 4 reasons which Arjuna gave so far is, first one is compassion, second one is he would not be able to enjoy, so enjoyment. Third is destruction of the family, and then fourth is saintliness and fear of sinful reactions. So these are the 4 reasons which we saw till now in chapter number 1, and then this particular, the last saintliness and fear of sinful reaction is going to continue in chapter number 2. So with that we have completely summarized chapter number 1, and this is from the book Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and part of it was from the Surrender Unto Me book, which is written by His Grace Gurujan Prabhu. So thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Gaur Premanande Haribol.